There are moments in life when everything seems to align in a mysterious way, as if the universe itself were silently conspiring to bring two paths together. You feel something in the air, an almost magical synchronicity, and without knowing how, certain people cross your destiny with a precision that defies logic. This kind of love is not born of chance, but of something much deeper, as if it had been written before time itself began. It is not about romantic idealization, but about an archetypal calling that awakens something long dormant within you. When love is written by the universe, signs begin to appear everywhere, subtle, insistent, and undeniable. To recognize these signs is to recognize yourself. If you believe that true love is more than an encounter, but a revelation, comment below, "I am ready to recognize the signs of my destiny." For Carl Jung, meaningful encounters between people are not the result of chance but of synchronicity, a principle in which apparently unconnected events reveal a profound and symbolic connection with the individual's inner psychic state. When we speak of loves that seem to have been written by the universe, we are stepping directly into this field of invisible meanings, where the personal and collective unconscious meet. According to Jung, every intimate relationship is a stage for projections. At first, we project onto the other internal images of the animus and the anima, the unconscious aspects of the masculine and the feminine that we carry within ourselves. When we fall in love, we see in the other what we long to integrate in ourselves. But as we evolve in the process of individuation, these projections begin to dissolve, and we see the other as they truly are, not as an extension of our desire, but as a reflection of our inner wholeness. It is at this point that the signs start to appear. They arise as symbolic messages from the unconscious, indicating that we are ready to live a deeper, more authentic and transformative love. These signs may come through recurring dreams, seemingly unlikely encounters, symbolic repetitions, or even inexplicable sensations that echo in both body and soul. When love resonates with the self, the organizing center of the psyche, it ceases to be just a romance and becomes a path of transformation. This kind of love not only connects us to the other, but to the totality of what we are. To recognize the signs of the universe is therefore to acknowledge that we are ready to transcend the illusion of separation and live an archetypal love that heals and reveals. At certain moments in life, seemingly random events occur with such precision and meaning that they cannot be ignored. They are subtle signs, symbolic repetitions, coincidences that defy linear logic. Carl Jung called this phenomenon synchronicity, the occurrence of two or more events that, although not causally connected, have a significant symbolic and subjective link. When we apply this concept to the realm of romantic relationships, we realize that love, when born from the depths of the unconscious, does not happen by chance. It is preceded by a sequence of signs that reveal an inner calling. We are ready to meet someone who will touch the deepest layers of our psyche. Synchronicity is not just a happy accident. It manifests the link between the outer world and the inner world. When the unconscious begins to move towards wholeness, it seeks to build bridges with the objective world, provoking encounters that seem orchestrated by an invisible intelligence. In this sense, love is not a rational choice or a mere alignment of affinities. It is a symbolic calling. The universe, reflecting the deepest needs of the soul, creates the perfect setting for two people to meet at the exact moment they are ready for such an experience. It is common to hear accounts of people who met by chance in improbable places, who felt an immediate, almost inexplicable connection, as if they recognized each other on a level beyond the physical. These accounts, often dismissed as coincidences, are in fact records of the action of synchronicity. When love is written by the universe, it announces itself through repetitive signs, names that appear several times during the day, specific songs that surface at the right moments, unexpected encounters with people who deliver similar messages, or vivid dreams of someone we have not yet met but who feels deeply familiar. These signs should not be seen as guarantees or promises, but as mirrors of the unconscious. The outer universe is reflecting the inner movement. The soul, through symbolic language, indicates that something is in the process of manifesting. Jung said that what we need to find in the world already dwells, in some form, within us. Synchronicity, in this context, is an expression of the union between the self, the organizing center of the psyche, and the external world. When this union occurs, reality begins to speak to us, not in words, but in symbols and experiences. A love encounter guided by synchronicity is not merely a union of bodies or interests. It is a meeting of destinies. It carries with it a deep calling to transformation. Something within us recognizes the other, not because they fill a void, but because they activate a process of expansion. Love guided by synchronicity is not always light or easy. It can be intense, challenging, disruptive. But this is exactly what makes it profoundly meaningful. It does not come to comfort us, but to awaken us. It is essential, however, that we remain attentive. Synchronicity does not shout, it whispers. Sensitivity is required to perceive it, inner listening to embrace it, and courage to follow it. Many times, we ignore these signs because we are trapped by rational logic or by the fear of surrendering to the unknown. But when we open ourselves to this symbolic language of the universe, we realize that love does not need to be pursued with effort. It finds us when we are aligned with who we truly are. Love written by the universe does not manifest in predictable formulas. It breaks patterns, dismantles expectations, and reveals paths we never imagined following. It is as if the universe was saying, "Now you are ready for something greater than you imagined." And then what seemed unlikely, impossible, or distant happens, not as a supernatural miracle, but as the natural manifestation of a deep inner alignment. To pay attention to synchronicity is, therefore, a way of engaging in dialogue with the unconscious. It is recognizing that life sends us clues, symbolic maps pointing towards transformative experiences. True love, when born from this dialogue, is more than an encounter. It is an awakening process. And the signs are always there, waiting for our eyes and hearts to be open enough to see them. At the beginning of any love relationship, it is common to feel a sense of wholeness. We see in the other qualities that deeply fascinate us, as if he or she embodied everything we always sought. This initial enchantment, though magical, is rarely a clear vision of who the other truly is. According to Carl Jung, this phenomenon occurs because at the start of relationships, we do not relate to the real person, but to the image we project onto them, an image shaped by unconscious parts of ourselves that we have not yet recognized as our own. This projection is inevitable and paradoxically necessary. Jung identified that we all carry within the psyche a feminine principle called the anima and a masculine principle, the animus. The anima represents the unconscious feminine aspects in men, while the animus represents the unconscious masculine aspects in women. These archetypes are not merely about gender, but symbolic forces that complement our personality. At the beginning of a relationship, we tend to project these archetypes onto the partner. A man projects his anima onto the woman he idealizes. A woman, her animus onto the man she admires. Thus, the other becomes the canvas on which we place the image of what we believe to be ideal love. This projection plays an important psychic role. It attracts us, moves us, and awakens emotions that would otherwise remain dormant. The fascination with the other, in this sense, is also fascination with what lies within us but remains unknown. The other becomes a living mirror of our inner world, and that is why initial attraction can be so intense, almost hypnotic. Without realizing, we stand before an aspect of our own soul, embodied in the figure of the other. Yet as living together deepens, projections begin to wear thin. We start to notice that the other has limits, flaws, traits that do not fit with the idealized image we created. This moment, often felt as disappointment, is in truth a powerful opportunity for growth. It is the beginning of withdrawing projections, a crucial step in the path of individuation, the process of becoming who we truly are. When we stop seeing in the other only what we projected, we begin to see who they really are. At the same time, we recognize within ourselves the contents we once placed outside. It is here that true love can begin, no longer based on idealization, but on recognition. A love that does not demand perfection, but embraces truth. The other ceases to be a magical figure and becomes a companion in the journey. And at the same time, we begin to consciously integrate within our psyche the aspects of the anima and animus that were once hidden. This awakening is profoundly transformative. A man who integrates his anima develops empathy, sensitivity, intuition. A woman who integrates her animus strengthens her assertiveness, clarity, and capacity for action. The relationship at this level stops being a stage of lack and becomes a space for mutual individuation. However, this process does not occur without resistance. The withdrawal of projections can generate pain, frustration, insecurity. Many relationships end at this stage because people mistake the end of projection for the end of love. But what really ends is the illusion. And when illusion dissolves, true love has the chance to be born. A love not dependent on the other's perfection, but on the willingness to grow together, to look inward, and to sustain the mirror the other represents. This dynamic is inevitable in every meaningful relationship. Projection and disillusionment are parts of the same cycle, necessary for emotional and psychic maturation. By understanding this in the light of Jungian psychology, we can transform conflict into learning and frustration into awareness. The other ceases to be the savior and becomes a partner in reflection, an ally in the path of integrating our inner polarities. When we recognize the role of projection and take responsibility for it, we take an important step towards inner freedom. We stop seeking in the other what we lack and begin to cultivate wholeness within ourselves. And paradoxically, it is precisely at this point that we can love more fully, because we are no longer looking for someone to complete us, but someone with whom we can share the completeness we are building. At the beginning of a relationship, we are guided by what enchants us. There is brightness, idealization, silent promises of wholeness. Yet as time passes and coexistence intensifies, conflicts, frustrations, and disproportionate reactions arise that seem not to fit with the initial love. It is at this moment that the shadow begins to emerge, not as an enemy of love, but as an essential part of its maturation. According to Carl Jung, the shadow is the set of aspects of our personality that we repress, deny, or ignore, but that continue to act unconsciously. And intimate relationships are one of the most powerful scenarios for its manifestation. Love, by drawing us intensely close to someone, opens the door for hidden contents to surface. We not only see in the other traits that irritate us, but also awaken in them their own shadow aspects. The shadow, in this sense, is not just individual, it becomes relational. We begin to notice possessive attitudes, jealousy, fear of abandonment, deep resentments, silent sabotage. These behaviors are not flaws of the other, nor isolated faults of ours. They are expressions of what is repressed and needs to be seen, understood, and, if possible, integrated. Jung did not view the shadow as purely negative. For him, the shadow is a source of vital energy, creativity, and transformation, as long as it is acknowledged and integrated into consciousness. The problem arises when we try to deny its existence, projecting it onto our partner. We say that the other is problematic, that they cause us pain, that they must change. However, what deeply affects us in another's behavior almost always reveals something unresolved within ourselves. This projection of the shadow is a way of keeping ourselves unconscious, trapped in the illusion that love should always be light, frictionless, pleasant. But true love begins precisely when we are confronted with the shadow, ours and the others. At that moment, we have the opportunity to step out of the cycle of unconscious repetition and begin a real process of self-knowledge. When we feel anger, envy, insecurity, or the desire to control, we are facing parts of ourselves that were marginalized, but that have something to tell us. The relationship becomes a kind of sacred mirror, where what we try to hide appears vividly. And it is precisely through love that we can sustain the gaze upon these uncomfortable truths. Integrating the shadow within a relationship does not mean accepting abuse, disrespect, or staying in toxic dynamics. It means rather using conflicts as a starting point for inner inquiry. What does this reaction say about me? What is being touched within me when the other acts this way? At what point in my story did I learn to hide this part of myself? These questions, if asked sincerely, have the power to transform crises into revelations. And each revelation brings us closer to ourselves, and consequently, to the other. This work requires courage, emotional maturity, and the willingness not to flee from pain. To love in this context is not only to feel pleasure with the other, but to sustain the process of growth the bond provokes. The presence of the shadow is not a sign of relationship failure, but of its depth. It arises as an invitation to evolution. Superficial relationships do not activate the shadow. Only the true ones do, the ones that touch the core of the soul. the ones that were written by the universe. To recognize the shadow is also to recognize the complexity of the human being. None of us is entirely light or entirely darkness. We are made of opposites, and relationships, when lived consciously, become the space where these opposites can dialogue. Instead of trying to change the other or escape the challenges, we can choose to dive into them, not to suffer, but to free ourselves from the unconscious repetitions that sabotage love. At the heart of it, every love crisis carries the potential for healing. Anger can teach about limits, jealousy about unresolved insecurities, frustration about unrealistic expectations. If we can sustain the gaze upon these emotions, without judging or repressing them, we begin a process of psychic reintegration. The shadow, when embraced, reveals its richness, and love, when it passes through this purifying fire, emerges truer, more conscious, stronger. The shadow is the guardian of the portal of transformation. Only those who cross this portal can experience a love that does not idealize but recognizes, that does not project but embraces, that does not demand perfection but seeks truth. To love then becomes a path of individuation, a journey in which we become more whole as we allow ourselves to see, love and integrate all that we are, including what we once feared to be. The path of deep love is not only an emotional journey, but a psychological and spiritual process that reflects the psyche's inner movement towards wholeness. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the progressive integration of the opposites that inhabit the unconscious, guiding the individual to become who they truly are. When we relate to the other on an archetypal level, we are not just living a personal story, but embodying an encounter that speaks to the soul and to destiny. In this context, the relationship becomes a mirror in which we see not only the other, but the totality we seek within ourselves. Throughout individuation, we are called to recognize, integrate, and reconcile the fragmented aspects of our personality: reason and emotion, instinct and spirit, masculine and feminine, light and shadow. The partner, when they appear as an archetypal figure, activates in us this calling to integration. He or she is not only someone with whom we share life, but a living symbol of what is dormant or undeveloped in our psyche. The relationship then becomes a laboratory of the soul, where each encounter, each crisis, each reconciliation serves the expansion of consciousness. Archetypal love, unlike love based only on desire or need, has a much deeper psychic function. It does not seek to fill voids or confirm fantasies. It confronts, awakens, heals. This kind of love invites us to leave the surface and dive into the depths of existence. The other is not seen as a savior, nor as a threat, but as a companion on the journey. Someone who, by symbolic resonance, mirrors our inner process. This is why certain relationships seem inevitable, as if they were preordained steps in the script of the soul. At this level of connection, love becomes a path of transcendence, not in the sense of denying reality, but of making it richer and more meaningful. The presence of the other activates deep archetypes within us: the lover, the warrior, the mother, the father, the healer, and invites us to develop these dimensions internally. The more we integrate these archetypal images, the less we seek outside what can only be found within. And paradoxically, the more whole we become, the healthier and more authentic our love bonds become. Individuation does not demand perfection in relationships, but consciousness within them. Even in separations, misunderstandings, and silences, there is a greater purpose at work, that of revealing us to ourselves. Jung said that the self, the organizing center of the psyche, uses all experiences, even the most painful, as part of the integration process. Thus, love does not need to last forever externally to fulfill its inner purpose. There are brief relationships that open deep portals of transformation, and there are long-lasting unions that, although peaceful, are poor in symbolic awakening. The depth of love does not lie in time, but in the ability to mirror the soul. To live archetypal love is to embrace the sacred that inhabits the bond. It is to recognize that the other, in their uniqueness, represents something greater than themselves, a channel through which the psyche speaks, provokes, expands. It is also to accept that love is not control but flow. It requires surrender, listening, humility. The ego, accustomed to wanting to dominate, finds itself challenged in this field, because true love asks it to surrender to the mystery of the soul. And this surrender, far from weakness, is psychic strength. It is a sign of maturity. In the Jungian view, relationships are not an end in themselves, but one of the most powerful tools of self-knowledge and development of consciousness. By loving consciously, we not only transform our bonds, but become bridges between the inner and outer worlds. Love then ceases to be just a feeling and becomes an initiatory path, a way through which we become more human and more divine at the same time. Wholeness is not a final state, but a continuous process of integration, and love, when lived in the light of individuation, reveals itself as one of the most powerful experiences in this process. It takes us to the limit, deconstructs and reconstructs us, challenges and teaches us. It shows us that the true encounter is not between two halves that complete each other, but between two wholes that recognize each other. And this recognition, at its core, is what we call destiny. The love that is born in resonance with the universe is not merely a meeting between two people, but a reunion with the soul itself. Through synchronicity, projection, shadow, and individuation, we understand that true love is the one that transforms us. It shows us what we did not yet know about ourselves, reveals our limits, awakens our hidden strengths, and invites us to expand consciousness. It is not the idealized love of fairy tales, but the archetypal love, profound, that embraces the whole truth of being. When we recognize the signs, listen to the subtle callings, and decide to walk with courage towards wholeness, relationships cease to be fields of repetition and become paths of revelation. To love, ultimately, is to allow the universe to move through us and teach us how to be whole alongside someone who also chooses to grow. If this content has touched you in any way, subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and share this video with someone who is ready to recognize love as a path of self-knowledge. And do not miss the next video appearing on the screen. It may be yet another sign the universe is sending you.